Good day, and welcome to our webcast, Modern Data Management for Manufacturing, How to Make Your Data Work Throughout the Enterprise, brought to you by CFE Media and Technology and sponsored by Epicor. Today we'll be joined by Paul Corning, CEO and co-founder of Aptditive, a technology and data consultant, and Gary Reitz, CIO with Blommer Chocolate Company, an integrated chocolate maker and supplier. I'm Kevin Parker, an editor with CFE Media and Technology. In this webcast, our speakers will explore best practices in modern data management that can serve the entire manufacturing organization, from engineering to sales. We'll also share case study examples and discuss some of the tools and technologies for data management that manufacturing professionals should be familiar with. Here are some tips to help you get the most from today's webcast. If you're experiencing issues with your slides or audio, refresh the browser or click the Refresh Media button directly under the presenter's picture. Control the volume of this webcast by adjusting the volume on your computer or on the platform. For technical problems with audio or the slide presentations, click on the question mark at the top right-hand corner of the screen to access system checks to try before contacting an online technician. If a technician is needed, type a message in the Ask a Question box and someone will get to you as quickly as possible. The Ask a Question box is also used to ask questions of our speakers. The live Q&A session will begin after the presentations conclude. To download a certificate of completion, a PDF of the presentation, and additional resources, use the Event Resources tab on the left-hand side of the screen. Those documents will also be available with the on-demand version of this webcast. This webcast is being recorded, including the Q&A session. We'll send you an email message within a week with a direct link to the webcast archive. Before beginning the presentation, we invite you to view the following video provided by today's sponsor, Epicor. At the conclusion, you may experience a few seconds of silence to compensate for varied internet speeds. Please stay tuned.
Manufacturers are facing a barrage of information about how new disruptive technologies will change the face of their industry. But for manufacturers to embrace mobile, social, analytics, cloud, and Industry 4.0, they must have a clear understanding of the technology value add within the context of today's business environment. With all this talk about Industry 4.0 and data deluge from all the interconnected devices on the factory floor and analysis in the back office, manufacturers may wonder, where does ERP fit into this new digital frontier? The reality is that ERP is more relevant in this equation than ever before, and manufacturers need the ability to contextualize data and integrate it into downstream process flows. To do this, ERP systems must be reimagined to meet the needs of new and emerging manufacturing technologies. Responsiveness demands simplicity and mobility, with tools designed to meet the specific needs of specific users. With an ERP system that delivers this, manufacturers can check off a big box on their Industry 4.0 readiness checklist and make good on the promise of real-time, actionable intelligence.
Welcome back. I'd now like to introduce today's speakers, Gary Reitz, CIO with Blommer Chocolate Company, and Paul Corning, CEO and co-founder Aptditive. Both are headquartered here in Chicagoland. During his 35-year career, Gary Reitz has served as Chief Information Officer at companies ranging from small private equity to global public companies, primarily in the consumer packaged goods and food manufacturing industries. For the last 6 years, he has served as CIO for Blommer Chocolate Company, the largest cocoa processor in North America. Other CIO roles include CIO at SGK, a global packaging and brand experiencing company, Ubiquity Brands, a private equity holding company for a $250 million snack food company, interim CIO for a $1 billion automotive remarketing company, and Vice President and CIO at Team Foods. Reitz specializes in partnering with functional leaders to apply technology to transform business processes, aligning IT investments and activities with business priorities and building high-performance organizations focused on accountability, teamwork, and execution. Reitz holds a Master of Business Administration in Finance and Economics from the University of Chicago and a Bachelor of Science in Accounting and Computer Science from Purdue University. Our first speaker, Paul Corning, is the CEO and co-founder of Aptitude, a data analytics and data science consulting firm specializing in helping manufacturers leverage their data to improve decision-making, optimize operations, and increase profitability. He works with Aptitude clients to define their data strategies and drive user adoption of advanced analytics solutions. Paul earned a BA from Augustana College and an MBA in Finance from the University of Chicago. He serves on the board of SIM Chicago, the leading CIO professional networking association, and is also on the board of Genesis Works Chicago, a nonprofit helping high school seniors from underserved Chicago communities gain pathways to career success. Thanks for joining us today, Paul, and please go ahead.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you for that warm introduction. Glad to be here with everyone. As Kevin said, I lead a data and analytics consulting company called Aptitude, and we design and build data analytics solutions for our enterprise clients, and my topic today is modern data management. I'm going to share with you what we see and feel in doing that work for our enterprise clients. Just personally, I have a background in operations research and have a lot of experience working with our manufacturing clients, such as Blummer. I think you have to start when I think about modern data management and what it means to me, and I'm going to say there's 4 defining features of modern data management, and to me that's really that first of all, your data is centralized. Second of all, that your data is cloud-based, that a truly modern data management solution would require enterprise-wide data, and lastly, that your data is both governed and secure. And to me, if you have all 4 of those, then you probably have a modern data management solution. That's what we're going to talk about today. And I thought I'd start maybe with just a case study. And when I think of modern data management and at its basics level, it's mostly around that centralization and access to data. So an example for us was a global manufacturing client that makes power equipment, and they really wanted a modern data solution, a modern data management solution, and their first use case and highest priority was around product warranty data. They wanted to get their product warranty registration data and then share it across the organization so that the product development teams, the customer service teams, the sales teams all had access to that same warranty data. So for this client, we started with a data strategy and painted kind of a picture of what the solution needed to be for their entire modern data management solution. And then we started with the centralization of that warranty data and provided some data visualization and analytics on top of it to share that data across the company. And what they were then able to do now is start to have that cross-functional view across that entire enterprise of that data through that modern data management solution. As we think about at the higher end maybe of a more sophisticated solution or a more advanced level of modern data management, to us it means really kind of data science and machine learning models that are applied to that data to improve your forecasting and make better predictions. And so for many of our manufacturing clients, this is a crucial need and use case that they desire. A different manufacturer client of ours wanted to really make better supply chain decisions and have a better view of what the demand side of their forecasts look like so they could do a better job of managing up to the supply capabilities. We built a centralized data management solution for them. We built all the data ingestion processes. And then we built some machine learning and forecasting models to help them start to do a better job of forecasting their demand. So, and eventually we think they'll be able to incorporate some of those predictive analytics into the kind of day-to-day business based on these machine learning models as they continue to develop over time. Those are just two classic case studies of the work that we do. You know, for our manufacturing clients, we really see the kind of high priority benefits of these modern data management solutions in these 6 areas. And the first that's most obvious often is supply chain management, the ability to get a good, clear picture of your demand patterns, to be able to understand what your supply capabilities are, and then marry that all up and have good transportation management solutions and have visibility across all of that data really requires a modern data management solution. The classic solution in the modern analytics world is this kind of predictive maintenance, and it's still a high value use case. I know that many of our manufacturing clients want to know when something's going to break and when I should take it offline and what the offline impact's going to be if I don't take it offline. Capacity management is a high value benefit and use case as well. It doesn't matter whether you're just trying to understand internal capabilities or a current client that I have that is wondering where to site his next manufacturing facility and how big should it be and how much capacity should it be able to. The other thing we've seen a lot of priority this year around capacity management is the ability to understand your full supply chain. If you're a global manufacturer and you're making product in China, it's been hard to get it over here. And so the ability to think differently and come up with models that predict and analyze various capacity models and supply and demand models are all part of that capacity management. And again, that's just a high value, very intriguing business case for the manufacturing clients that we work with. The fourth is demand forecasting. Everybody wants a better demand forecast, and you really can't get that without line of sight across your entire enterprise. You need the sales data, the marketing data, the POS data if you're selling a product sold from a retailer. If you've got an industrial clients, usually primarily to the CRM, but you want to have all of this data in order to get a better demand forecast, and that's going to feed a lot of your other operations planning and operations management work. One of the more intriguing areas that we see a lot of value and benefit for our manufacturing clients is in price optimization. We're all moving to a dynamic pricing world. The airlines have been there for years. You are going to go there if you're not there already. And the ability to shift and change your prices quickly is not something many organizations have that capability to do today. And so if you can get, again, that demand and supply information and strong customer 360 information, you can now start to build some advanced analytic models that help you move to a much more of a dynamic pricing model. An example I have today is a client that builds a product that has not been sold through e-commerce websites, that in 2020 is heavily sold now through e-commerce websites. And in that world, dynamic pricing is just a standard. And so they need a whole different set of data and a whole different set of analytics solutions in order to build that dynamic pricing capability. And it really calls for that modern data management solution. And the sixth highest area that we see for our manufacturing clients, I would say, in terms of where are the benefits, where's the business case, is in really customer profitability, lifetime customer profitability, something we call cost to serve, when we want to have a full view of what it really costs us to serve various clients, as well as kind of what's that customer lifetime value to us. You're lucky to have on the call today Gary Reitz with Plumber Manufacturing, and he can talk to many of these benefit areas that have been really helpful in his organization as he has moved to a modern data management solution. One of the things we have to, as we think about modern data management solutions, just to quickly understand where we've come from and what forces are driving us to these solutions. If you think about the history of manufacturing data, and it's fairly short, we didn't really get decent CAD and CAM and integrated manufacturing data until the mid-'80s up to 2000. In the early 2000s, we were doing static reporting, where we're generating, we probably had a centralized data warehouse if you're a significant enterprise. You probably had a standard ERP across the enterprise, and you just started to see the beginnings of user self-service. But the reporting was mostly static. You'd get an email once a week with your production volumes from last week, or an email once a with what yesterday's sales were. In mid-2008 through about 2015, really, we started to see the area of dashboards and visual analytics, and we also entered the big data era. There are two trends that occurred at that point. We now had better visualization tools, so we could produce something that was a little more attractive looking than that static report. And we also started to get large data volumes that we needed to deal with in some of that reporting and some of the analytic tools that we built. But today, where we're at in 2020, and as we go into 2021, we are in a whole different world. And we now have this cloud capability that allows us to process much higher volumes, and usually much simpler and much easier to support with a cloud-based infrastructure for your data and analytics solutions. We also have really sophisticated data science kind of capabilities with machine learning and AI and natural language processing capabilities that are built in to some of these relatively simple technology solutions that you can start to incorporate machine learning and advanced modeling and analytics into some of your data and analytics solutions. We're in the area of significant IoT data volumes, where the data volumes are just going through the roof, and we have to incorporate all those. So really, what I see today as the key forces that are shaping kind of these modern data management solutions, it's the fact that we have more data, whether it's IoT or SCADA and process control data. There's an always ever need to have faster insights. Our business cycles continue to get shorter, and I want to figure stuff out quicker and get insights quicker from my data. And the third force really is just that we have better tools. We have so much better tools in terms of our ability to ingest the data, and better tools for presenting the data visually attractively, and then letting you as an engineer interact with it. Along this history, what we have seen is the migration of, in the people side of the business, from just consuming reports to really you as an engineer serving as a data analyst. And we see that in every function at most of our enterprise clients, that the finance department has their financial analyst, and the product development folks have their analysts. And you as an engineer now are spending a portion of your week as a data analyst. And so we all have to be kind of fluent and capable with all these technologies. I want to turn now and talk more about how do you get to a modern data environment from wherever you are. And maybe you're there, maybe you're not, but let's just talk in 4 areas about what I would see as the key kind of stepping stones to get you where you want to go. And those 4 areas are around strategy, technology foundation, data architecture, and governance. And I'll start with strategy. It's near and dear to my heart. I don't know how you'll get wherever you want to go if you don't start here. We have rapidly changing technology world. These tools come out, the companies get bought, brand new tools come out. I don't know how you'd pick them if you didn't have a picture of where you're going. And so to me, it all begins with strategy, and you're not going to get to wherever you're going to get unless you kind of lay that out in a strategy. So I consider an enterprise data strategy is foundational to your modern data management migration and journey. And as I think about it, for you as a manufacturer, the guiding principles that I think about is that really you have to align your engineering plans with the enterprise plan. There has to be an enterprise data strategy. There might be a separate enterprise data or engineering data strategy, but you got to align it with your enterprise data strategy. You want centralized data. You want clean, reliable data pipelines. You want that data being fed into your central source, and you want to be able to trust the data. And you got to kind of have a strategy that addresses both of those. One of the things that many of my clients miss is that the people process issues are kind of equally as important as the cool technology tools. Yes, I can sell you a machine learning predictive analytics solution that will get you a tighter demand forecast. But you probably need to make some people and process changes about what they do about that forecast, who gets the data, and how those decisions are made. So really, you can't get to wherever you want to go in one step. So you really need a plan to get there, and data strategy is the place you start. A data strategy should give you a technical data architecture that tells you what's the tools, how is the data organized. It should recommend specific tools. It should start to talk about data governance, which I'm going to talk about in a second. It should lay out a schedule and budget. And it also addresses things that in the engineering department can be a challenge, is kind of sponsorship and stakeholder management. Who on the executive team cares, and what are they willing to do about it? Next, I want to talk about technology. And obviously, technology underpins anything we're going to try to do around a modern data management solution. We at Aptiv see 5 pieces to every client's modern data environment. There's 5 components you have to have. And those are an ingestion solution, a transformation solution, some sort of orchestration solution, and then lastly on what we would call the front end, visualization and advanced analytics. And I'm just going to walk through those individually. This picture is our reference architecture at Aptiv, and it's what we use for most of our clients in terms of how we help them think about their modern data management world. And the heart of any modern data management world is that cloud data platform cylinder in the middle. That's where we're going to store all of your cleaned, consolidated, standardized data. It's what some of our clients would like to refer to as the single source of the truth. We're going to figure out how to get that data working for you by putting it all and building all of your modern data management platform on top of that cloud data platform. The first piece we talked about was you need an ingestion solution. If you go back to the slide, over here on the left, we have our source systems. Your on-premise applications, your SaaS applications, any business applications. You may also have IoT or streaming kind of applications that you want to ingest data into your cloud data platform. And we need an ingestion component to our modern data management solution that gets data from its source, from your on-premise server, from your SaaS applications, from your IoT and streaming, or even your PLC devices, and puts it out into your cloud data platform. Ingestion is also where we start the data governance process. It's where we get our first hand on the data and where we can start to clean up your data at the source. So the ingestion part is not only the solution around ingestion for how do we get the data in, but it's also where we can start to apply data governance to clean it up. From the cloud data platform, once we get that data from the source systems into our cloud data platform, you also need a transformation solution. Because the data that we take from your ERP system or your CRM system may not be as friendly as you'd like it to be. And we need to standardize, consolidate that data across all of your source systems, and turn that data from its raw form coming out of those other source systems into what we often refer to as a business layer, where we standardize it and then we use terms and names and make it easy for any analyst in any function of the company to go pull data. If we talked earlier about the analysts that exist in each department in your organization. If we have data in our cloud data platform and we've used commonly understood terms to describe the data, a financial analyst can look at your operation and manufacturing data and make sense of it, and actually build some cool models and make smart decisions based on it. So the transformation just takes the data from its raw form and turns it into a kind of business consumable form. Orchestration is just that we need to have these tools that keep our data pipeline always flowing. So if we build pipelines to take data from your Epicor CRM or ERP system, we got to make sure that it happens all the time. If there's problems, that it can restart, and we know the last time we loaded and we don't get duplicate data. So orchestration is a component of your modern data management solution that needs to make sure that the pipelines flow. At the front end, there's two pieces. There's visualization and advanced analytics. And we think of visualization as the ability to send reports, but now we call them dashboards to all of your users. So they're typically broadly used across the entire enterprise. It might include things like user interface or user experience standards and templates. And it should include things like user adoption strategies. If we build good dashboards and we have figured out what it is that you need as a business user to consume this data, then we're going to do a much better job of getting the business benefits we want. And advanced analytics is the fifth component of a modern data management platform, and it's where we can now put some sophisticated data science tools in a toolbox and start to do predictive analytics, predictive forecasting, machine learning, all sorts of advanced fun tools. I said there were four features too we want to talk about. The third, I want to talk about, is data architecture. It's fundamental to everything you want to do, because if you look at here's another picture of a reference architecture for our clients. Still has this centralized data hub in the middle. And the raw layer represents the data as we take it right from your source system. So if you're running an Epicor ERP system, we're going to put that data right into our data hub in a raw form. We're going to just copy the tables right from the Epicor into our data hub. But the business layer is where we translate that into something that makes a lot of sense to everybody across the business. And it's where we build a data model and a data architecture. And so your data architecture takes data from multiple sources. It could be ERP data, it could be CRM data. And then it models it or curates it and creates a simple to understand model of your business. So we now are feeding, if we have a good data model and a good data architecture, and we have all those four technology components, we are now feeding all the data and modeling in a way that everybody in the organization can see how we define a product, how customers roll up across divisions and regions, and we can roll up prices and financials in a smart way. So the data model matters in terms of the outcome that you get. And one of the interesting things we found as a company is that the value of your data increases exponentially with how easy it is to get and how easy it is to understand. It's kind of that mantra of your silo is not my silo. And the data engineer and the financial analyst and the transportation analyst, if they all can look at each other's data and understand it, you're going to get a lot more value from the data than if you just put it in its raw form. Really the fourth piece of trying to think about your modern data management is to try to think about data governance. And even in my presentation, I put it at the back. I probably should have put it front, because that's what I see many of my enterprise clients do around data governance. I like to be a little bit extreme here, but I would say you have a choice. You either have data governance or you got data chaos. In other words, if you can't do something about keeping your data clean and making sure it is clean, you're going to eventually have trouble. And what we consistently see for our clients is that it's hard at a lot of enterprises because no one really wants to pay for this kind of greater good stuff. If the customer service department cleans up the way they define customers, they have to pay for it, but it's commonly used across every department in every company. And so data governance can be hard because even the budgeting and who's going to pay for it can be hard to figure out. We use a term called data stewardship to mean who's taking care of the data and who owns it and who sets the rules and the business rules around the data. And it's pretty rare in a lot of companies to have good data stewardship. So most of my clients, as we build data strategy, we have to increase their level of data governance and data stewardship. We also see a lot of our clients struggle with the thought that data governance is just kind of a technology problem or a data problem, when really it's mostly people and process issues. I had an interesting client where they would find out that they would have 20 copies of a certain customer's record. In other words, they had 20 IBMs in their customer system. And what they figured out was that the customer service people were incented to get off the phone as fast as possible when a call came in, and then it was faster for them to set up a new customer than it was to see if they already existed. So it was a huge data governance problem because the sales team couldn't tell how much they sold to IBM, but at its root was a very simple people and process problem. All I can tell you around data governance is, at a minimum, you should clean your silo. Get your data in a format and a model that you can use, and get it ready for an overall enterprise data governance. A couple data governance myths I'll tell you about. MDM will not fix your solution, or will not fix your problem. It's only a part of the solution. Data governance does not cost too much. I know it seems like it because it can be expensive, but the value is going to be there long-term for your company and your enterprise. We often hear, sometimes in the data science space, that we're just going to clean up this data for that one model. I'm just going to clean up my customer hierarchy so I can do a lifetime customer value model and solution. And that doesn't make any sense. You ought to clean up that data once and for all and put it in a central data cloud managed modern data management platform. At a minimum, I'd recommend around data governance that you do something and start small and improve over time. It's an area for a lot of opportunity for many of our enterprise clients. And as we think about it, and I don't care where you're at in your journey, you could be highly mature with advanced data science solutions all across your enterprise, or you could be just starting this journey. But really, key to it is to have a modern data platform. And I would argue that the key features of a modern data platform is to make sure you centralize your data, you build in data governance and data stewardship, you layer on good analytics and models, and you kind of wrap all that up around a data strategy. If I had to give you some, my experience best tips on best practices, things you should think about, one is to pick the right tools. But architecture is a lot more important than picking the right tools. You ought to make sure you get a strategy and have a plan, and that you ought to think big but start small. Your data world will change significantly over the next couple of years, but you can start small and get there. And lastly, that you really should be building your analytics and data science, machine learning, and AI muscles if you haven't already. Many of these tools are consumption-based. You can start very economically. And if you don't have a good demand forecast algorithm, then maybe you should build one and start getting better at it. And they're going to change over time anyway, so just get started. The particular unique issues that we see for manufacturers that are around modern data management is really trying to blend that kind of information technology and operational technology architecture. It needs to be thought through. And the last thing is that these data volumes are going through the roof. The IoT and SCADA and operational technology data volumes are exponentially bigger than any of the transaction data that's been running through your enterprise. So one of the things I want to do, and I think you're very lucky to have with us today, Gary Reitz, who's the CIO of Blummer. And Gary's going to talk through kind of a case study on the work that he's done around moving to a modern data management solution in his organization. Gary,
Great.
are you there?
Thanks, Paul. And I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thanks. And thank you, Paul, for that introduction. And I do want to share with you that, in listening to Paul's presentation, I can see areas where we didn't quite address some of those better practices as well as we should. But I'm glad to where we're ending up today, and what I think we have now is a strong foundation for kind of, as he puts it, a strong data, mature data organization. So what I want to share with you, kind of how we got there, and certainly would be able to answer any of your questions because there's so much that we've done over the last 4 or 5 years that we did well, didn't do well, had to start over. But essentially, this is a journey. We started probably 4 or 5 years ago, just after I got here to Blummer, after I was listening to the business say, our data, we cannot trust it, none of it's accurate, the systems aren't integrated. So, when sales and finance get together at the end of the month and they report out how they think they did business-wide, well, sales had one number, finance had another, and the operation said, well, this is how much we produced, why didn't you sell it, right? So they're all working off of different data sets. So when Paul talked about single source of the truth, that certainly was one of the driving forces for our effort. And the other thing that really drove our effort was, the need to more efficiently and productively pull all our data together. The sales directors, we sell over 600 million pounds of chocolate a year across over 1,000 customers. And every month, they only did it monthly because they had to go through a lot of manual data capture, looking at reports, keying it into spreadsheets, calling each individual plant to say, what did you sell, who did you do? So it was chaos, as Paul put it. So those were two of the key drivers. So as Paul said, start with a strategy, and we did. We knew, at least in our IT group, we didn't have the expertise, but I knew we needed to get that strategy and figure out what is better practice. So we leveraged outside resources and brought together the business and IT to kind of lay out how we wanted to get started. And as Paul said, start small, and we did. We basically said, all right, let's get our basic customer information, product information cleaned up and centralized. Let's get our basic order information so we can assess sales volumes, sales dollars, and maybe even gross margin by customer and product group, what have you, even by our different manufacturing plants. So we started there, and that took us a big bulk of our initial first 3 or so years because we were learning, the organization was learning, the business was starting to understand what they needed to do to be part of this, because there was a lot of understanding, as Paul talked about earlier, about, well, what business entities data entities do you want to capture? How do you want to report them? How do you make decisions? So it's not just, they just said, go IT, go build this. No, it was a truly collaborative effort because we didn't really understand all the business rules. We certainly knew the data and where it resided, and we had a sense of how good it was in terms of accuracy and timeliness. And but it's important that we work together to do it. And we started, as this slide shows, building what we call a data hub. We gave it a name here at Blummer, calls it BIX, which stands for the Blummer Integration Exchange. So it is where we brought in our raw data from all our disparate application systems. So we didn't bring it all at once. As I said, we basically brought in some basic information to cleanse it, standardize it, agree on the business rules, and then present it through, we're using Power BI from Microsoft, but you can use just any tool that we just happen to be a Microsoft shop. But we did go through that initial effort, and yeah, it was a struggle. It was hard to get the business together. It says, where do we start? Well, you can't think about just customers and products without thinking about where they're manufacturing, what lines they're worked on, or what roles in the organization that working on those lines. But that was too big of a task. So we did break it down, and yeah, we may have to go back and redo some of our data models. But nonetheless, we got into a place where we got the reports done, we got the data model, we got the analytics, we have people using them, see the value. So we quickly, if you think 3 years is quick, but so we had some sooner than that, but we were quickly able to get that data that can slice and dice and report however they want to, and avoid the sales directors end every month spending 6 nights of their week of the last month in the kitchen table trying to put all their data together so that we report what they think of the results, even though finance would say, no, those aren't the right results. So we got that. We finally got them both on the same page, which was a big hurdle to get over. But we did go through and address some data governance. We addressed master data management to some extent. We did it even more recently. And we do have now people in the organization called subject matter experts. These are the data analysts that Paul says. We have one in finance. We have one in supply chain planning. We have one in customer service and sales. And we have one in inventory management operations now. And they form what we're calling a center of excellence. And the IT side of the house, which is kind of what I manage, is also included in that center of excellence because that group needs to work together to understand, the current data. And if there's needs additional data, they'll come to us. If they need some help with data modeling, if they need some help with calculations, if they need some help with visualizations, we can help them either through our internal staff or outside service firms. This is their bread and butter. And in fact, I would recommend to most people use someone on the outside. And we were fortunate enough to use Aptitude as kind of our primary contractor to work side by side with us to deliver this foundational here in terms of what we call our BIX and business intelligence platform. And it is kind of working closely with the business because their needs always change. And with the structure that we have in place in terms of those subject matter experts lining up with the business users, they can work directly with their VPs and directors to better understand and deliver reporting back to them fairly quickly. So we've made a lot of progress in the last 3.5, 4 years. And the last year, we've taken that next step, and I would say we're in our phase 2. We've learned a lot. We've got our foundation in place. But now we need to move it to the cloud because we started on the cheap and started to prove it out on premise, and so we moved to the cloud, and that was more of a kind of a lift and shift. But certainly a lot of the data technology components are different, but the basic model is there, and as the slide shows, we're essentially this is what we have in place today, and we are beginning to bring in other data sources now other than the basic core sales, finance, and we brought in inventory information. We're bringing in production information now. We're bringing in first pass quality information and being able to integrate that together and report it together. And we'll talk a little bit more in the Q&A about exactly what some of those metrics are. Going forward, there's been a lot of discussions about now that we are on this cloud platform and we have a much faster way to ingest data and bring it through the pipeline to have it available for visualizations and reporting, is to really look at the core of our business now. Because in the first pass, we were looking at sales and revenues. Basically, everybody needs to see that. Now we want to make sure that are we producing product most efficiently? Are we producing, are we looking at the efficiency of the lines? Are we looking at where some of the quality issues are? Are we looking, ensuring that we looking at inventory, so it turns into non-saleable that we have to sell it to pig farms, right? Because we do. But we also then have had a lot of discussions lately with our colleagues in the operations side of the house, and they've got a couple key applications that they're using now for business intelligence to really help them day-to-day improve the operational efficiency of each of the production lines in the plants. And it's a combination of coaching, data collection from sensors on all the lines that give them a sense of throughput, what products on it, how many we produced, how long did it take, different temperature and other types of measures. And that data is fed back to them in real time in screens out in the plant, and they have team huddles to look at what they've done that day and what the previous shift may have done to address, what we need to do to improve. What needs to change for this next run to make it even better. So that's kind of an immediate feedback, and it includes, and that's the kind of data that you can have with some of these data analytic tools and a good data model. And so it's an interesting application of it, and it's a direct application to folks on the shop floor. They're operators, supervisors, engineers, CI folks. All are using that tool, and it's available even that the executives can look at some of the higher level metrics come out of that. We're also looking at real-time visibility inventories. We don't have all our inventories in our WMS system yet, but that's once we do, we'll get it in there. We just added value, so we can actually look at the value of inventory and where it is and who it's maybe allocated to. And we will integrate with OT and IT, and that's going to be the challenge, I think, as we look forward. And that's, because there is, as Paul said, a lot of data in our data systems and manufacturing execution systems, and we got to figure out how best to bring that in to report against our production, report against what our forecast was, report against some of the long-term production schedules to see, in fact, can we possibly meet that demand plan that we know we need to meet so sales can sell the product as they committed to their customers. So again, I'll stop there. I think we're, with good guidance in firms like Aptitude and following up with a good strategy and a data model, with governance and all those things Paul talked about, I feel good that whether we really understood it at the time, as Paul laid it out very clearly, I know we didn't necessarily, but in the end we got there. So again, start small and don't give up and just kind of move forward and incrementally make improvements. So with that, Paul, I think I've used up my time, but I'll turn it back to you for at this point.
Thanks, Gary. And all I'll say is that any animal on a farm that's lucky enough to eat Blummer chocolate that's non-sellable is a damn lucky animal. Blummer's very high quality, excellent chocolate. If you had to give one piece of advice, and I know we're running late, so I'll just move along real quick. What would be the one risk or challenge that you think anybody on the phone who's looking at modern data management journeys should think about?
Well, I would start with the problem statement, and what are the outcome for that problem statement. For example, on engineering, we're right now looking at, causes of downtime. You're leveraging some of the data that I told you about from the system that captures that on the shop floor, and then tying that in with our maintenance management system data around work orders and repairs and maintenance costs and activities. And to help manage schedule preventive maintenance appropriately. But to do that, you start there with your problem statement and your objective, what you want to get, and then you say, well, God, what do we need to do to get there? Turn that over to some analysts in your IT, analysts in your business, to kind of work through what data you need, how do you want to see it, and then you can work through going through the steps to define where the data is, see how good it is. If it's not good, you better take steps to improve the quality, standardize it, cleanse it. So it's a long process, but I would tell you, if you don't start out with understanding where you want to get, you're never going to get there. And then working with the right people in the room to make it happen.
That sounds great. Thank you, Gary. I think it's time for the Q&A. I'm going to turn it back over to Kevin.
Well, thanks, Paul, so much for that. I liked your presentation. I especially like the idea that everybody today is a data analyst. And Gary, thanks so much for giving us some insight into how your production management functions interacts with the day-to-day of the execution side. Gary, we've got some time left remaining for a few questions. I'd like to ask you one that's Paul, that's a little bit off the beaten track. You mentioned that predictive maintenance tends to be one of the biggest best sellers when it comes to applications using IIoT and edge and analytics. But then a lot of your presentation was more about the production management and the supply chain management side. And anybody who's a veteran in this area knows that, about 10, 15 years ago, advanced planning and scheduling was already quite a big functional dilemma for the enterprise. And you had technologies like I2 technologies, in-memory processing. I'm wondering myself whether how advanced planning and scheduling has changed from that era now into an era where maybe instead of you know where everything in the supply chain is in real time to a greater degree. Does that make sense?
And you want Paul to answer that, Kevin, or Gary?
Paul, I meant that to ask it of you originally.
Well, predictive plant maintenance and predictive maintenance was the biggest splash. It was the first big splash around data science in the manufacturing world that we saw. It got the most media press and attention that a predictive model is going to save me billions because I could know when I need to go do some preventive maintenance on anything in my plant. I don't know that I think of it today as the highest value. I still believe this line of sight visibility across the enterprise, not just in the operations team, but in sales, marketing, and everywhere of that supply chain is where the high value is. And we're not there yet. We just still don't have perfect line of sight to where product is and what the demand's going to be, and be able to marry that up across all the functions at most manufacturing companies still today.
Great.
And I would add
Gary,
to that,
please.
Yeah, if I could, Peter, I'd add to that. I mean, I've been, as you read my bio, it kind of reminds me of the different experiences, and I'm always aware that no matter how long ago some of these technologies have been introduced, there are still probably a lot of companies that haven't even heard of them or even attempted to implement them. And because they're at different maturities of their business, Blumber was a family-owned company for 75 years, right? And we were just purchased a couple of years ago. But, they were doing things the best way they could, and it's a family-run business. So when I got to Blumber and others that they brought in to kind of bring us up, allow us to get to the $1 billion pounds of chocolate a year and be more global, there was a different thinking that came in, and they said, well, you don't have these systems. Where is this data? Where is that data? You mean you don't have a forecast? Or you don't kind of look at your forecast accuracy at all? Or you don't have a capacity planning? You don't even have a scheduling system. Right? So there was a lot of places that are still in their infancy and moving to there. So and thankfully these days, with more mature programs like Paul laid out here, you don't have to make the same mistakes that were a lot of trial and error, because without good data, none of those systems work. Right? Not looking across the enterprise, as Paul said, if you don't have the supply chain planning systems hooked up with good inventory or with good demand plans, or understand your capacity in your plant, that even though sales wants to sell this much, you can't produce it. Maybe you have to, stage some inventory, right? Strategic inventory. So there's a lot of, that's why it's just not an IT issue, just not a business issue. It's a collaborative business, and you got to set out what you want to accomplish and start going after it.
Thanks, Gary. Paul kind of alluded to the fact that a lot of the technologies we're talking about here today span OT, operations technology, and IT. And when you look at CFE media publications, that's really a constant theme, is how the evolution of the relationship between OT and IT, and hopefully they're working collaboratively much better today than they did years ago. So Gary, you have more from the IT side perhaps, but you have great insight into that relationship. How would you say the introduction of these IT systems into Blumber impacted the relationship between IT and OT?
I think it greatly accentuated the need to collaborate between the two. I at least had some experience with that in other companies like Dean Foods, who's a national dairy company, that already had understood the connection between OT and IT. At Blumber, there was a lot of silos when I got there, and and they did need to start to work together means starting at the top. So I worked with our VP of operations. I worked with the director of engineering, the director of operations, and they came from different companies and understood the importance of it. So, but we knew we couldn't move everything all at once. So, you know, we each had to kind of get our act together in our own groups. And now we've started working together. We picked a project a year ago, which was kind of OT-IT network segmentation because of all the cybersecurity risks, you know, and that is a big risk. I mean, a lot of large companies have been hit by hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases. I don't know, because I've talked to those folks that, you know, their OT side of the house was infected, not the IT side. So we understood that risk, and we worked with our engineering counterparts, and actually now just finishing up that project to better secure the OT-IT, so we can share data now more securely, right? And they can get out to the internet more securely without risking cyber attacks. So that's where we started, and now we're working more closely now to integrate from a maintenance management capability with what's really happening on the floor, to again look at analyze downtime, make sure we got our the right preventive maintenance plans in place. So we're now talking about bringing that data together in our data warehouse.
That's very interesting. Thank you. We're coming near the end of today's broadcast, so I want to introduce one final topic and give you both an opportunity to comment. Let me bear with me a second. You know, I think the biggest constraint in manufacturing environments today is undoubtedly labor and skilled labor, and we find that more and more. And, you know, the idea that small to mid-sized companies have to use other means to foster their growth. Any thoughts on what the right combination of in-house source resources and third-party services would be in most small to medium-sized enterprises, Paul, in order to execute sound data management and get sound data to deliver a benefit that can be realized as return on investment?
Yeah, I would tell you, Kevin, you know, for many of our clients, you have to have a blend. You can't pay consultants to do it all. It's too expensive. And your internal team hasn't been exposed to a lot of the latest, greatest technologies. And there's a difference in a lot of organizations between running IT and thinking about architectures for the future. And so I think those kind of higher order design and architecture things are definitely things you should think about outside resources for that. We do all of our work thinking that your analyst in your organization are going to do a lot of the dashboard building and visualization analytics work. So I think that's one of the ways we try to build an in-house outside model that's kind of shared across both of those.
I see. And is it difficult for today's manufacturers to find those recommended in-house resources in today's hiring environment?
You should ask Gary about it. It can be hard to find good quality engineers. Reporting folks are much more capable.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
No, I'm done. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I would say where I've seen the assistance come for operations is through our CI teams that we have at each plant. And those CI team members, you know, have probably come up recently, you know, either through their training at school or otherwise at other companies to do more data analytics and look at data. And so those are the folks that are helping the actual engineers with understanding what's happening through visualizations and collecting data and reporting it back. And that analyst is working with us as well as manufacturing management to deliver that reporting. So it is a collaborative effort. But that's where we saw it. Now, whether there's anybody in operations actually doing it, I'm sure there are.
Great. And so you see your engineering departments, Gary, as trying to become better informed on some of these more data issues, if you will?
Absolutely. I mean, we're moving from a family-run business who family members, knew what was going on, knew every person, knew how your plant a piece of equipment worked. But now, more of a organized, structured way of doing it, and it's very data-driven now across the board. So everyone's getting on that bandwagon.
Well, thanks you so much, Paul and Gary, for taking the time to share your expertise with us. And of course, I'd also like to thank Epicor. Special thanks for sponsoring today's event. And now that we're just about done, we'd like to hear how we did. The exit survey will pop up on your screen as soon as the webcast ends. Please take a moment to complete it because we use this information to improve our webcasts. Finally, on behalf of CFE Media and today's sponsors, thank you for attending, and we'll see you next time.